Months after the incident, Maplewood hosted its first annual Day of Unity, a community event aimed at celebrating resilience and promoting equality. The park where Amara had been humiliated was transformed into a vibrant space filled with music, art installations, and booths run by local organizations advocating for social justice. Children laughed as they played games, while adults engaged in meaningful conversations about how to create a more inclusive society. It was a day meant to honor not just Amara's courage, but also the collective effort to rebuild trust and understanding within the town. Amara stood backstage, nervously adjusting the colorful stickers on her prosthetic leg. She had been invited to speak at the event, an honor that thrilled and terrified her in equal measure. Her mother, Elena, stood beside her, offering quiet reassurance. "You don't have to say anything you're not ready for," Elena reminded her gently. But Amara shook her head. "I want to do this," she said, her voice steady despite the butterflies in her stomach. For so long, she had felt powerless. Now she saw this as an opportunity to remind others that even the smallest voices could spark change. When it was finally time, Amara stepped onto the stage to thunderous applause. The crowd parted respectfully as she made her way to the microphone, her prosthetic leg clicking softly against the wooden platform. Looking out at the sea of faces, friends, neighbors, strangers who had followed her story online, she took a deep breath and began to speak. "Hi, my name is Amara Johnson," she started, her voice carrying across the park. "A few months ago, something happened to me that I never thought would. An officer took my prosthetic leg because he thought it didn't belong to me." A hush fell over the audience as she paused, gathering her thoughts. That moment hurt, not just because I couldn't walk without my leg, but because it made me feel like I didn't matter. Her words hung in the air, raw and honest. Parents held their children closer, some wiping away tears. Amara continued, her voice growing stronger. But then something amazing happened. People stood up for me, not just my family, but people I'd never met before. They showed me that I wasn't alone. And because of them, I learned that being different doesn't mean you're less. Being strong isn't about never feeling scared. It's about finding the courage to keep going anyway. The crowd erupted into cheers, many rising to their feet. Amara smiled shyly, waving as she stepped back from the microphone. Behind the scenes, Marcus watched proudly, his heart swelling with admiration for his daughter. He knew this moment wouldn't erase the pain she had endured, but it marked a turning point, a chance to rewrite her story on her own terms. Following her speech, the event transitioned into workshops and panel discussions, led by activists, educators, and law enforcement officials committed to fostering positive change. One session focused on disability awareness, featuring speakers sharing personal stories of overcoming prejudice. Another explored ways to hold institutions accountable, emphasizing transparency and community involvement. These conversations weren't easy. They forced people to confront uncomfortable truths, but they were necessary steps toward progress. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the park, families gathered around a large mural painted earlier in the day. Artists had worked alongside children and volunteers to create a colorful depiction of unity, featuring images of diverse hands reaching out to one another. At the center of the mural was a silhouette of a young girl with a prosthetic leg, surrounded by words like respect, equality, and hope. Elena found Amara standing in front of the mural, gazing at it intently. "Do you see yourself there?" she asked softly. Amara nodded, tracing the outline of the figure with her eyes. "Yeah," she replied, "and I'm not afraid anymore." In that moment, it was clear that Amara's journey had come full circle. What began as an act of humiliation had become a catalyst for transformation, not just for her, but for an entire community. Though challenges remained, the town of Maplewood now carried a renewed sense of purpose. To ensure that no child would ever have to endure what Amara did again. And as fireworks lit up the night sky, marking the end of the Day of Unity, Amara looked up, feeling a quiet sense of peace. Life hadn't returned to normal. it had evolved into something far greater. The fallout from Officer Daniels' suspension and criminal charges rippled through Maplewood like a storm. The police department, eager to distance itself from the controversy, announced sweeping reforms aimed at addressing systemic issues within its ranks. Training programs on cultural sensitivity and disability awareness were introduced, and an independent oversight committee was established to review misconduct complaints. While some praised these efforts as long overdue progress, others dismissed them as superficial fixes designed to pacify public outrage. For Amara and her family, the changes offered a glimmer of hope, but also served as a reminder of how much work remained. Elena attended town hall meetings, speaking passionately about the need for accountability and genuine reform. "This isn't just about one officer," she told the crowd during one particularly emotional session. "It's about creating a system where no child has to feel the way my daughter did." Her words resonated deeply, earning applause and nods of agreement from those in attendance. Meanwhile, Amara began to find her footing again. The outpouring of support from across the country had been overwhelming. Letters, gifts, and even custom-designed stickers for her prosthetic leg arrived daily. Each message carried a note of encouragement, reminding her that she wasn't alone. One sticker, adorned with the words, "Courage comes in all sizes," became her favorite. She stuck it prominently on her prosthetic leg, wearing it like armor against the lingering doubts in her mind. But healing wasn't easy. Some nights, Amara still woke up in tears, haunted by memories of that day at the park. To help her cope, Elena enrolled her in art therapy sessions, where she could express her emotions through drawing and painting. Slowly, Amara began to channel her pain into creativity. Her sketches, once filled with dark clouds and shadowy figures, started to include bright colors and hopeful imagery: a sun breaking through rain clouds, a bird soaring high above the trees. As weeks turned into months, life in Maplewood began to settle into a new rhythm. The protests outside the police station dwindled, replaced by community discussions focused on building trust between residents and law enforcement. Activists partnered with local leaders to organize workshops and dialogues, emphasizing collaboration over confrontation. Even some officers stepped forward, acknowledging past mistakes and pledging to do better moving forward. Officer Daniels, meanwhile, faded into obscurity. Stripped of his badge and facing legal consequences, he retreated from public life entirely. Rumors circulated about his struggles to find employment, but few in Maplewood spared him much thought. For many, his downfall symbolized the possibility of holding authority figures accountable, a rare but meaningful victory. Amara's story continued to inspire others far beyond her hometown. Journalists wrote follow-up pieces highlighting her resilience, while advocacy groups used her experience to push for policy changes at the state level. A documentary crew even reached out to Elena, asking permission to film a segment about Amara's journey. Though initially hesitant, Elena agreed, seeing it as an opportunity to amplify their message of justice and equality. Through it all, Marcus remained a quiet yet steadfast presence in Amara's life. He visited more often now, making up for lost time by attending school events, helping her practice soccer drills, and simply being there when she needed him. His role in securing justice for Amara had strengthened their bond, proving that love and action could bridge even the widest gaps. By the end of the year, Amara stood taller, not just physically, thanks to her upgraded prosthetic leg, but emotionally as well. She had faced unimaginable humiliation and emerged stronger, her spirit unbroken. Though scars remained, they no longer defined her. Instead, they served as reminders of her courage and the power of standing up for what's right. One crisp autumn afternoon, as golden leaves swirled around her feet, Amara walked confidently through the same park where everything had changed. This time, she wasn't sitting alone on a bench. She was surrounded by friends, laughter filling the air. As she looked down at her prosthetic leg, now covered in colorful stickers representing hope and resilience, she smiled. Life hadn't gone back to normal, because normal no longer existed. But maybe, just maybe, something better lay ahead. As the investigation into Officer Daniels progressed, the pressure on him became unbearable. News outlets continued to cover the story daily, with headlines like "Officer Under Fire for Humiliating Disabled Girl" dominating the news cycle. Protesters gathered outside the police station every morning, chanting slogans and holding signs that read "Justice for Amara." The once quiet town of Maplewood had become a battleground for accountability and reform. Despite the mounting evidence against him, Officer Daniels refused to take full responsibility for his actions. In interviews, he doubled down on his initial defense, insisting he was simply following protocol. "I didn't know it was her leg," he repeated during a tense press conference. "If I had known, I wouldn't have taken it." But his words rang hollow, especially when footage emerged showing how dismissive he had been toward Amara's explanations. Critics pointed out that even if he hadn't known immediately, his handling of the situation was cruel and unnecessary. Daniels also tried to shift blame onto the system, claiming he was being made a scapegoat for broader issues within law enforcement. "This isn't about me. It's about policies that need to change," he argued. While some sympathized with this perspective, most saw it as an attempt to deflect responsibility. Social media users were quick to call him out, posting side-by-side comparisons of his past behavior and current excuses. Memes mocking his statements went viral, further damaging his reputation. Behind the scenes, Marcus worked tirelessly to ensure the investigation remained thorough and unbiased. He reviewed every piece of evidence personally, cross-referencing witness testimonies with bodycam footage. What stood out most was the sheer lack of empathy displayed by Daniels, not just toward Amara, but in previous incidents as well. Complaints from years ago detailed similar patterns: aggressive behavior, failure to listen, and blatant disregard for the dignity of those he interacted with. It was clear that Daniels viewed his badge not as a symbol of service, but as a tool of authority. The final blow came when Marcus arranged for Amara to testify before an internal review board. Though she was nervous, her mother and father reassured her that her voice mattered. Sitting at the table, flanked by Alina and Marcus, Amara spoke softly but clearly, recounting the events of that day in vivid detail. She described the humiliation of having her prosthetic leg taken away, the stares from bystanders, and the way Officer Daniels ignored her pleas. Her testimony left the room silent, many members visibly moved by her courage. When it was Daniels' turn to speak, he struggled to justify his actions. Faced with irrefutable evidence and Amara's heartfelt account, his usual bravado crumbled. For the first time, he appeared genuinely remorseful, though it was too little, too late. The review board deliberated for hours before delivering their verdict. Officer Daniels would be suspended without pay, stripped of his badge, and referred for criminal charges related to civil rights violations. The announcement sent shockwaves through the community. Supporters of reform cheered the decision, seeing it as a step toward meaningful change. Critics, however, argued that suspending one officer wasn't enough. The entire system needed overhaul. Meanwhile, Daniels retreated from public view, his career in tatters. For Amara, the outcome brought a mix of relief and lingering unease. While she was glad Daniels faced consequences, the emotional scars remained. She often found herself replaying the incident in her mind, wondering what she could have done differently. But with her family's support and the overwhelming encouragement from strangers who rallied around her, she began to heal. One evening, as they sat together at home, Marcus turned to Amara and said, "You showed incredible strength through all of this. Never forget that your voice has power." Amara nodded, clutching her prosthetic leg, now adorned with new stickers sent by supporters. Though the journey ahead would still require resilience, she felt a renewed sense of hope. Justice might not erase the pain, but it proved that standing up, even when it's hard, could spark real change. The investigation into Officer Daniels' actions moved quickly, thanks in large part to Marcus's quiet but relentless influence behind the scenes. While he avoided stepping into the public eye, His connections and position allowed him to push for transparency and urgency in ways that others couldn't. Every piece of evidence, body cam footage, witness statements, and past complaints was meticulously reviewed. What emerged was a troubling pattern, one that painted Officer Daniels not as an isolated bad apple, but as someone who had operated with impunity for years. Marcus spent long hours poring over the details, his jaw tightening each time he saw Amara's tear-streaked face on the video. The footage showed how Daniels ignored her explanations, dismissed her humanity, and treated her like a suspect rather than a child. It was infuriating, but Marcus forced himself to stay focused. He knew emotions could cloud judgment, and this wasn't just about revenge, it was about accountability. As the investigation gained momentum, Marcus arranged a meeting between Amara, Elena, and Officer Daniels. It was a bold move, one designed to confront the officer with the full weight of what he'd done. The meeting took place in a small conference room at the police station, its walls bare except for a clock ticking loudly above the door. Daniels arrived first, looking uneasy but still defiant. When Amara and her family walked in moments later, his expression shifted, from confidence to confusion, then to something resembling fear when his eyes landed on Marcus. "Do you know who I am?" Marcus asked calmly, leaning forward slightly in his chair. Daniels shook his head, clearly unsure why this sharply dressed man was present. "My name is Marcus Johnson," Marcus continued, letting the words hang in the air. "I work for the Department of Justice. And this," he gestured toward Amara, "it's my daughter." Daniels blinked, visibly shaken. For the first time, it dawned on him that this wasn't just another routine complaint. It involved someone with significant power and resources. His usual bravado crumbled as Marcus laid out the findings of the investigation. Complaint after complaint against Daniels was read aloud, painting a damning picture of repeated misconduct. Each allegation was backed by evidence, leaving no room for denial. Throughout the meeting, Amara sat quietly beside her mother, clutching a notebook filled with sketches she had drawn during the ordeal. She didn't say much, but her presence spoke volumes. At one point, Marcus turned to her and asked softly, "Is there anything you want to say to him?" Amara hesitated, her fingers tracing the edge of her prosthetic leg, which had been returned to her earlier that week. Finally, she looked up at Daniels, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "You made me feel like I did something wrong," she said, "but I didn't do anything wrong. I just wanted to eat my ice cream." Her words hit hard, not just for Daniels but for everyone in the room. Here was a child, stripped of her dignity, speaking truth to power without malice or bitterness. Daniels stammered an apology, though it sounded hollow even to his own ears. I thought I was doing my job," he muttered, avoiding eye contact. Marcus cut him off before he could continue. "Your job is to protect people, not humiliate them," he said firmly. "And if you can't see the difference, then maybe you shouldn't have a badge at all." By the end of the meeting, Daniels was visibly defeated. The once authoritative figure now seemed small, diminished by the realization of the consequences awaiting him. As they left the room, Amara held her mother's hand tightly, drawing strength from her presence. Though the road ahead would still be difficult, she felt a flicker of hope, a sense that justice might finally be within reach. For Marcus, the meeting was just one step in a larger process. He knew punishing Daniels wouldn't fix everything, but it was a start. Accountability mattered, not just for Amara, but for every person who had ever been mistreated by someone sworn to protect them. As they stepped outside, the sun breaking through the clouds, Marcus placed a reassuring hand on Amara's shoulder. "We're going to make sure this never happens to anyone else," he promised. And for the first time in days, Amara believed him. Elena's decision to share Amara's story on social media proved to be a turning point. She posted a heartfelt message late one evening, accompanied by a photo of Amara sitting on the park bench before the incident. The caption read, "This is my daughter, Amara. Today, she was humiliated and stripped of her prosthetic leg by an officer who thought it was stolen. This isn't just about her. It's about how we treat our most vulnerable. Will you stand with us? By morning, the post had gone viral. People from all over the country were sharing it, commenting with messages of outrage and support. Some shared their own stories of mistreatment by law enforcement, while others expressed disbelief that such an incident could happen in modern times. The hashtag #JusticeForAmara began trending on Twitter, drawing attention not only from ordinary citizens, but also from activists, journalists, and even celebrities. Local news outlets quickly picked up the story. Reporters flocked to Maplewood, eager to interview anyone connected to the case. Neighbors spoke candidly about their frustrations with the police department, recounting instances of unfair treatment they'd witnessed or experienced firsthand. Activist groups organized protests outside the police station, holding signs that read "Protect Our Children" and "Accountability Now." The small town, once known for its quiet charm, suddenly found itself at the center of a national conversation about systemic injustice. Officer Daniels, unaware of the storm brewing around him, continued to defend his actions during interviews. In one particularly awkward segment on local television, he insisted he was simply following protocol. "I was told there was suspicious activity involving a prosthetic device," he explained, his face flushed under the harsh studio lights. "I didn't know it belonged to her until after I took it." His words did little to quell public anger. Critics pointed out the absurdity of accusing a child of stealing her own leg, highlighting the lack of basic empathy in his approach. Others dug deeper, uncovering past complaints filed against Officer Daniels. It turned out this wasn't the first time he had been accused of misconduct. Previous allegations included using excessive force and making racially biased remarks. These revelations only fueled the fire, adding weight to calls for his immediate removal from duty. As the days passed, the pressure mounted. Local politicians weighed in, urging the police chief to take swift action. Even some of Daniel's fellow officers distanced themselves from him, fearing association with someone rapidly becoming a symbol of unchecked authority. Meanwhile, Amara's story continued to resonate with people far beyond Maplewood. Parents of disabled children reached out to Alina, offering words of encouragement and solidarity. Strangers sent letters and gifts to Amara, including custom-designed stickers for her prosthetic leg, each one carrying messages like "Stronger Together" and "You Matter." Despite the overwhelming support, life wasn't easy for Amara. She tried to stay positive, finding comfort in the kindness of strangers, but the memory of that day lingered. Every knock at the door or mention of the incident brought back flashes of humiliation. Still, she found strength in knowing she wasn't alone. Her mother remained steadfast by her side, answering interview requests and coordinating with advocacy groups to keep the momentum going. Behind the scenes, Marcus worked tirelessly to ensure the investigation into Officer Daniels was thorough and impartial. He reviewed bodycam footage himself, noting moments where Daniels ignored clear signs that Amara was telling the truth. Witness statements painted a damning picture of an officer more interested in asserting dominance than protecting those he served. Each piece of evidence reinforced what Marcus already knew. This wasn't an isolated mistake. It was part of a pattern. The growing scrutiny forced the police department to act. A formal inquiry was announced, promising transparency and accountability. While many welcomed the move, skeptics remained cautious, warning that investigations often dragged on without meaningful results. For now, though, the people of Maplewood, and countless others watching from afar, held on to hope that justice would prevail. Through it all, Amara became a reluctant symbol of resilience. Though she hadn't asked for any of this, her courage inspired others to speak out against injustice. What started as a single moment of humiliation had ignited a movement, proving that even the smallest voices can spark change when given the chance to be heard. Marcus Johnson sat in his sleek, quiet office on the 12th floor of a government building in the state capitol. The room was bathed in soft light from the tall windows behind him, and stacks of documents lined his desk. Reports, case files, and policy proposals related to civil rights violations across the state. He had spent years climbing the ranks to become one of the most respected officials in the Department of Justice, but none of that mattered now. His mind was consumed by Alina's voice on the phone and the pain in Amara's story. For a man who rarely showed emotion publicly, Marcus felt a storm brewing inside him. He clenched his fists under the table, replaying every word Alina had said. A prosthetic leg, a piece of equipment designed to help his daughter walk, had been treated as evidence of theft. The thought made his chest tighten with anger. But Marcus wasn't just angry. He was strategic. Over the years, he had learned how to channel his emotions into action, and this situation was no different. He picked up his phone and dialed an old colleague, someone well connected within law enforcement circles. "I need you to pull everything you can find on Officer Daniels," Marcus said, his tone calm but firm. "Every complaint filed against him, every disciplinary record. He's about to get some unexpected attention." His colleague didn't ask questions. They knew better than to pry when Marcus used that particular tone. After hanging up, Marcus leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling. Memories flooded his mind. Images of Amara as a toddler taking her first steps, with her tiny prosthetic leg, laughing as she stumbled and fell. She had always been resilient, never letting anything hold her back. And now someone had not only questioned her dignity, but also stripped her of something so integral to her identity. It was unforgivable. Though Marcus wanted nothing more than to march into Maplewood himself and confront Officer Daniels, he knew that wouldn't solve anything. Instead, he began drafting a formal request for an internal investigation. As someone high up in the Department of Justice, he had the power to demand accountability, but he also understood the importance of subtlety. If word got out that he was personally involved, critics might accuse him of bias or overreach. For now, he needed to keep his role behind the scenes while ensuring that justice was served. Later that evening, Marcus called Alina again. "How's Amara doing?" he asked, his voice softer this time. "She's trying to stay strong," Alina replied, though her own exhaustion was evident. "But it's hard, Marcus. She keeps asking why this happened to her." Marcus sighed, guilt weighing heavily on him. Despite his position, he hadn't been there for Amara when she needed him most. "I'll fix this," he promised. "Not just for her, but for everyone who's ever been treated like they don't matter." Alina hesitated before responding. "Just don't make this about revenge. Make it about change." Her words struck a chord with Marcus. This wasn't just about punishing one officer. It was about addressing the deeper issues within the system. He ended the call with renewed resolve, knowing that whatever happened next would ripple far beyond their small family. As Marcus continued working late into the night, reviewing preliminary reports sent by his colleague, he couldn't help but think about the town where it all began. Maplewood was the kind of place where everyone knew each other, or at least pretended to. Yet beneath its surface lay cracks of prejudice and inequality. What happened to Amara was a symptom of something larger, something Marcus had dedicated his career to fighting. By the time dawn broke, Marcus had laid the groundwork for what would become a meticulous investigation. He didn't share any details with Alina or Amara yet, wanting to protect them from unnecessary stress. Still, as he sipped his morning coffee and stared out at the city skyline, he allowed himself a small moment of satisfaction. Officer Daniels had no idea who he was dealing with. And soon, neither would anyone else. Amara hobbled home, her heart heavy with shame and confusion. Each step without her prosthetic leg felt like a reminder of the humiliation she had endured. Her mother, Alina Johnson, was in the kitchen when she heard the front door creak open. The sight of her daughter struggling to walk into the house sent a jolt of alarm through her. "Amara, what happened?" Alina asked, rushing to her side. Tears streamed down Amara's face as she recounted the events at the park. Through broken sentences, she described how Officer Daniels had accused her of wrongdoing and taken her prosthetic leg. Alina's expression shifted from concern to disbelief, then to fury. How could someone treat a child, her child, with such cruelty? She knelt beside Amara, pulling her close in a tight embrace. "It's going to be okay," she whispered, though inside her mind raced with anger and worry. Determined to take action, Alina picked up the phone and dialed the local police department. Her hands trembled as she waited for someone to answer. When a dispatcher finally responded, Alina explained the situation, her voice firm but controlled. To her dismay, the person on the other end seemed indifferent, brushing off her complaint with vague promises of looking into it later. Frustrated, Alina hung up, feeling powerless against a system that seemed unwilling to listen. But Alina wasn't one to give up easily. She decided to call Amara's father, Marcus Johnson. Despite their strained relationship, they hadn't spoken in years due to disagreements over his demanding career, which often kept him away from family life. Still, this was different. It wasn't just about pride or past grievances anymore. It was about protecting their daughter. With a deep breath, Alina dialed his number. Marcus answered on the third ring, his voice calm but distant. "Alina, is everything all right?" he asked, sensing the urgency in her tone. She quickly filled him in on what had happened, describing every painful detail of Amara's encounter with Officer Daniels. There was a long pause on the other end of the line before Marcus spoke again. His usual composure cracked slightly, replaced by a quiet intensity. "I'll handle it," he said firmly. Though he didn't elaborate, Alina knew better than to press him further. Marcus always had a way of keeping things close to the chest. Back at home, Amara tried to distract herself by sketching in her notebook, a hobby she loved. But no matter how hard she focused on drawing, the image of Officer Daniels' stern face lingered in her mind. She couldn't shake the feeling that she had done something wrong, even though her mother assured her otherwise. That night, as she lay in bed staring at the ceiling, sleep eluded her. Questions swirled in her head. Why did he think I stole my own leg? Why didn't anyone stop him? Meanwhile, Alina wrestled with her own emotions. She replayed the incident over and over in her mind, imagining all the ways she could have protected Amara if she'd been there. Guilt gnawed at her, but so did determination. She vowed not to let this go unanswered. This wasn't just about Amara. It was about standing up against injustice and showing her daughter that she deserved respect, no matter who tried to take it away. As the hours passed, Alina began drafting a post on social media, detailing what had happened. She hesitated at first, unsure if sharing such a personal story was the right move. But something inside her pushed forward, a need to ensure that others understood the gravity of what Amara had experienced. By morning, her words would reach far beyond Maplewood, igniting a firestorm of support and outrage. For now, however, the Johnson household remained quiet, each member processing the day's events in their own way, united by a shared desire for justice. The small town of Maplewood was known for its quiet streets and friendly neighbors, but beneath the surface, tensions between the community and law enforcement had been simmering for years. It was one of those ordinary afternoons when Officer Daniels, a stern-looking man in his late 40s with a reputation for being overly strict, was patrolling near the local park. The sun was shining brightly, and children laughed as they played on the swings and slides. Among them sat Amara Johnson, a bright-eyed 12-year-old girl with a prosthetic leg, enjoying her favorite strawberry ice cream on a wooden bench. Amara wasn't like most kids. She had faced challenges from an early age, having lost her leg in a car accident when she was just 5. But instead of letting it define her, she embraced life with resilience and joy. Her prosthetic leg was more than just a medical device. It symbolized her strength and determination. On this particular day, she had chosen to wear a colorful sticker on it, something that made her smile every time she looked down. Officer Daniels noticed Amara from afar. At first glance, he thought nothing of it. A young girl eating ice cream. But then his radio crackled with an anonymous tip about a suspicious individual loitering near the park. The description was vague. A person sitting alone, possibly hiding stolen items. His eyes narrowed as he approached her, his boots crunching against the gravel path. To him, Amara's presence seemed out of place. Why would a child be sitting by herself? And why did her prosthetic leg look so shiny? "Hey, you!" he called out gruffly, startling Amara. She turned to face him, her spoon still in hand. "What are you doing here?" he demanded, his tone sharp and accusatory. "I'm just eating my ice cream," Amara replied softly, trying to stay calm despite feeling uneasy under his intense stare. "This doesn't belong to you, does it?" he said, pointing at her prosthetic leg. His voice carried a mix of suspicion and authority. Before she could respond, he bent down and grabbed her leg, yanking it off without warning. Amara gasped, tears welling up in her eyes as she tumbled backward onto the bench. The other children nearby stopped playing, their laughter replaced by shocked silence. "You're saying this is yours? Prove it," Officer Daniels barked, holding the prosthetic leg like it was evidence of a crime. Amara stammered, unable to find words through her sobs. Passers-by began to gather, some whispering among themselves while others watched in disbelief. No one stepped forward to intervene. Unbeknownst to everyone present, this moment would spark a chain reaction far beyond what anyone could imagine. For now, though, all Amara felt was shame and fear, emotions no child should ever have to endure. As Officer Daniels walked away with her prosthetic leg tucked under his arm, Amara sat there, humiliated and broken, unaware that her story was about to change not only her life, but the entire town.